Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and I don't normally do these sort of introductions very often anymore, but I feel like this video kind of warranted a little bit of explanation. You see a lot of videos on YouTube from artists doing sketchbook tours and showing off how pretty their sketchbooks are and talking about their progress and how their art's come along throughout that sketchbook. That's not really what this video is about. I have recently started a new sketchbook, and one of the things I noticed that my art in my sketchbook has changed, but not necessarily in a good way. So I'm here to show you what an unorthodox and unpretty set of sketchbooks looks like from starting to draw 4 years ago to now. So even if this is just entertaining for you, or maybe you might learn something or have a revelation, either way I hope you enjoy this video just because it's something a little bit different and something I wouldn't normally post. So let's get to top down view and we can get going. I don't really know why this felt like an appropriate time to do this kind of video, but I suspect it's just because I have recently started my new sketchbook, which is the Leuchtturm square sketchbook here. I did do a review on the specific sketchbook, so if you want to see how the paper performs with various materials, you can check that out. I'll leave the link in the description and I'll also stick it on the end card so that you can watch it after this video. So one thing I noticed when I was doing this sort of switch over, I actually sat and had a flick through all of my sketchbooks, and it brought up some interesting points. So this really isn't about the evolution of my art, it's more about the evolution of how I've used my sketchbooks. And I don't know whether this is going to be helpful to some of you or not, but I just found it quite interesting and I thought it would be a nice thing to share with you all. So one of the things that you'll notice about my sketchbooks is they're numbered, and that's just organised gem, that's nothing special. But when you start from the beginning, and my very first sketchbook, it was just a really cheap basic ring bound A4 pad here, and you can see that it started from the 1st of January 2018, which was around the time that I obviously decided to start to learn to draw. And when you're going for your first sketchbook, you really don't need anything fancy. When you're just finding your feet with learning to draw, you basically just need paper and a pencil, and that's what this was. WH Smith is a stationer that is a UK company, and their own brand pads like this are really affordable, and when you're a beginner they do the job perfectly. So as I started to sort of flick through these the other day, the thing that interested me was this first one was a lot of exercises. Now I'm not going to go through every page of the entire sketchbook because I don't want to bore the pants off you all, but I just found it interesting and I'd kind of forgotten about this, and I spent a very early part of my drawing journey, I suppose if you want to call it that, just practicing and not actually drawing anything. So here I'm practicing water droplets and coloured pencil. Now for someone at the very start, this seems like a really odd place to start. And that's the other thing that struck me as well. I didn't really have any sort of structure. I was teaching myself, and this first sketchbook is really erratic. And when you look back on it now, and some of you will know me quite well by this point, this was actually a scroller challenge from, this was the January scroller challenge from 2018, and I drew a face. And most of you know I don't draw people, I don't even like drawing people, but at this stage I was obviously very experimental and kind of like, I want to draw all the things. So I find it really funny that I actually chose to do this for a scroller challenge right at the beginning of my drawing journey. And you can see naturally that a lot of these types of images are very simplistic compared to the way that I would draw now, and that's natural because obviously you learn as you go along. But it's quite eye-opening to to go through this, and you can see like there's more exercises, line fundamentals, trying to work on 3D shapes, that kind of thing. And that was one of my very early YouTube videos as well. That was I actually did this in the sketchbook for the YouTube video. That video is still available, and it's to teach you pencil pressure control and to help you bring shading into your colouring without doing anything complicated. So it's like a wee trip down memory lane. But I really didn't draw anything spectacular at all in this first sketchbook, apart from I have some Yoshis somewhere. Yeah, all the Yoshis. And that was a redraw of a picture that I drew many, many years ago. And it taught me that not drawing for, you know, like 10 maybe plus years, I hadn't learned anything. And that was pretty obvious because I never practiced in between. And this is almost identical to the original drawing. So that actually was a big turning point for me. And I realised that if I wanted to improve and I wanted my art to change, I was going to have to, you know, do a bit of research and start watching YouTube. And I was going to have to learn stuff. So that was the 28th of March 2018. So it took me a couple of months to get to that point. And I mean, there's loads of sketches. And I came across this little bad boy as well. Now, most of you, this will not be of any relevance to you. But one of the things that I really love to do is play video games in my spare time. And one of the games that I love a lot is Rayman. And the reason that I love it is that all the backgrounds for the game are hand drawn. They are not digitally rendered. And this is the start of one of the scenes in Rayman Origins. And I started to do this in colour pencil. Now, the work that I have done here is actually quite detailed considering how early on in my journey I was. But as you can see, it never got finished. And that was something that later on I realised that I'd kind of bitten off more than I could chew. But it's interesting that even really early on I was willing to go absolutely flat out and try anything. And something that I learned from this was don't try and run before you can walk. So that serves as a really good reminder. I've got some perspective stuff here. So this first sketchbook for me really was, it was just a lot of trial and error, looking at textures with coloured pencil. A bit of drawing theory here as well. You know, we're talking about different perspectives and things that make your artwork a composition. That first sketchbook, let's face it, just not very exciting at all, but interesting that it was very erratic. And you know, I was going between this sort of trying everything situation to trying to sort of slot in some sort of exercises. So the first sketchbook for me was really about realisation of what I was going to need to do if I wanted to be able to get better at drawing. And it serves as quite a nice reminder. And it's when we get to a point, it's very easy to compare yourself with others who are also on an art journey, and it's the worst thing that you can do. And if you go back to your very first sketchbook, which is for me now 4 years on, you really do see how far you've come. Not just in your actual ability to draw or to art, but even the fact that you know yourself a lot better and you know your place in terms of where you are in your journey a lot better, because when you're starting out you just want to draw all the things. That was a real eye-opener for me, and I highly recommend if you want to start to draw, or if you're just at the beginning of your journey, maybe you've come from being a colourist. I know there's quite a lot of you that watch that are kind of in that position where you're, should I start drawing? I can't draw. Go for it, get yourself a really cheap sketch pad and just grab a pencil and go. Just as an aside, sketchbook number 2 is actually a black paper sketchbook. So this is not what I would call what has now developed into my day-to-day sketchbooks. This is more of a specialist sketchbook, and it's just because it's got black paper in it. So I have done some designs and some drawings in here, and I just come in here when I feel like doing something on black paper. So that one really doesn't count, but just to let you know that it is there. So sketchbook number 3, which was technically my second day-to-day sketchbook. One of the things I learned about the first sketchbook was it was too big. I couldn't really take it anywhere, and because it was a cardboard cover, it was quite flimsy. So if I wanted to pull my sketchbook out and sit somewhere that wasn't at a table, I needed something to lean on. So I wanted to go for a hardback version, and I decided to go for a smaller one as well, just for the ease of, you know, moving it about and not having to lug this great big A4 pad with me. And again, this was a really cheap sketchbook. It was a Daler Rowney, 150 GSM paper. But the thing that struck me straight away was the paper in this has got a good bit of texture on it, and I kind of like that about it. So I've got this little inside cover here, and the dates that covered me for this sketchbook. So I actually went through this sketchbook in less than a year. Now I did have the same information, but it was just written on the cover of this one in the red marker. So by this point, I kind of had a bit more of a feeling about, number one, what I kind of wanted to learn to draw, and it was animals, but also what I actually wanted to use my sketchbook for. So it kind of became a catch-all, and basically anytime my brain farted out an idea, I wanted it to be in a sketchbook. But being still very early on in my journey, I wanted it to look pretty. So when you flick through here, there is a mixture of ideas that went down, and a lot of them are for art challenge videos, you know, for the subscription boxes. But every now and then I would try and draw like a finished piece, just so that if anyone happened to see my sketchbook and flick through, there would be some pretty pictures in there. So you can see there was lots of ideas, but I also started to expand on the mediums that I was using as well, and that was very much exploration at that point. And that for me came through reviewing and unboxing the subscription boxes. So it was a really nice organic way for me to start trying out different mediums. I still primarily liked pencil, and you know, I realised that graphite was my thing. And again, you can see here, you know, that's a pretty detailed drawing of a bird just for your sketchbook. But so as we go on through, you can see there's this mixture sort of going on. Tried my hand at some faces, didn't like doing the faces, it wasn't very good fun. And then when we get a bit further on, I did okay with noses, I can draw noses. A bit further on, when I went on my honeymoon, I took my sketchbook with me. I drew my watch on the plane because it was a really long flight. But while I was away, Inktober happened, and being on my honeymoon and having lots of spare time, I thought it would be a great idea to do it, to sort of start pushing myself a little bit. So by this point, I've been drawing about 10 months. And you can see here was my first attempt at Inktober. And the results vary greatly, and I think that's the main thing I took away from it. For the stage that I was at, and having never drawn in ink, I think I did okay for my first Inktober, but I learned that the quality of the drawings varied greatly from day to day, depending on what the subject matter was and how I managed to interpret it. That has to be the worst drawing of a boxer I've ever done in my life. But again, daily drawings, and doing Inktober did teach me things, and it also taught me that I'm not very good with ink. And that took up quite a large part of this sketchbook. This remains one of my favourite quick sketches ever, is my little beluga whale, because he's freaking adorable. I would actually quite like to do that again and do it like a line and wash style, but that's entirely beside the point. So I did try like more sort of cartoonish, like illustrative styles as well. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. So Inktober for me the first year was a real discovery, and the fact that it was teamed with being on this beautiful island made sketching on a daily basis a really nice thing for me to do, and something that I realised I was going to stick with it, you know. So I was all inked out after Inktober, and started to go back to some pencil. And again, there's still a lot of learning here. Again, more figures. Still wasn't convinced at that point whether I wanted to draw people or not. But lots of practice, lots of trying. And, you know, just seeing whether or not it was I actually really wanted to do it or not. These were some really quick sketches of some dogs. And that's Woo. That was my little Jack Russell that's not with us anymore. So you can see in this sketchbook the mixture of the ideas. You know, I started to use this as a sort of first step, you know, like brainstorming kind of thing, mixed in with trying new mediums. Now this paper was quite resilient, so I had that option, and then every now and then an actual drawing. I felt as if I had to keep this aesthetic. Here's my book. I did that with an HB pencil. And I'm still using the same mechanical pencil. It still hasn't run out of lead, which is quite remarkable in itself. So at that point, I kind of knew by the end of this sketchbook that I would probably be using sketchbooks more for ideas. And you can see I've got, you know, I've put down colours and things here, that kind of thing. and I wasn't actually going to be a person that was going to walk about outside when inspiration struck me and start sitting down and, you know, doing quick sketches of like willowy trees and sunsets and things. I realised that my sketchbook was not going to be that to me, and it made me a little bit sad, because you see people who have really pretty sketchbooks, and I have a friend that's like that, and every sketch that's in his sketchbook looks like a finished drawing, and I kind of died a little bit inside, because I knew that that's not what a sketchbook meant to me, and mine were never going to look like that. So that was kind of the realisation from my second daily sketch. I don't want to use the word daily because I never drew daily apart from in October, but my day-to-day sketchbook. So just for the number order, sketchbook number 4 was a Copic sketchbook. This is designed to take markers, obviously. So again, this was not a day-to-day sketchbook, but I did start it, and I started drawing all video game characters in Copic marker. I still do this from time to time. I still quite enjoy it, but it's much further down the list for me because I'm not a big marker fan. This is just a bit of fun and helped me kind of like relive a bit of my childhood whilst playing with Copic, so that still floats about as well. So that brings us on to 5, and this probably is where I started to realise my preference for the type of sketchbook I wanted. I liked the smaller format of the Daler Rowney one rather than this big A4 ring-bound pad, and I liked a hardback one, so I wanted to go for something like that again, but I found the portrait style was quite restrictive, and I just always felt as if I was kind of like running out of space in it. And I decided to try a square format. So this is the ELO sketchbook. Now, Drawing with Waffles, Rin, she's a huge fan of these. I don't know if she's still using them now, but she was for a long time. And I thought I would give one of them a go. So this is more like sort of evolving into the type of sketchbook that I like to use now. So this one here ran from 2019 to 2020. So just into that lovely lockdown period here in the UK, and I felt by this point I was getting a little bit more confident about what I wanted to use the sketchbook for. Now every now and then you're always going to do a finished drawing in your sketchbook, well, as finished as it can be, but I was much more comfortable with that fact by this point, and I started to sort of jot down notes and things as I was going, and, you know, testing out colours, that sort of idea. So I became much more comfortable with the purpose that my day-to-day sketchbook was going to fulfil. Some of you might remember the Mahi Mahi tutorial. I had great fun picking these colours out, and I realised that my sketchbook wasn't for anyone apart from me, and that's probably the most important lesson that I learned from, you know, going through 3 sketchbooks at this point. I really feel that this sketchbook shows the actual start of my drawing journey, or my sketching journey, whatever you want to call it. We got to Inktober again, and I decided to do it a second year, and if you compare these ones to the first year, the introduction of colour is a huge difference. There's a lot more colour going on this time round, which was nice, and it's because I discovered, you know, some different art supplies, some new mediums, and ones that I picked up along the way with like your scroller boxes and everything. There was some that stuck, and so I decided to use them in with always orangutans, in with Inktober. So that was actually quite nice, and it's nice to see that jump from the first year to the second year, because again, when you're beginning to draw or learning to art, the biggest jump in your progress is always in that first stage when you're learning the actual mechanics of it and the fundamentals of it. That was pretty good. Again, video game characters usually feature quite heavily for me because it's just my thing. And to this day, this was the prompt for Dark, and this was turned into a sticker, and to this day this sticker still sells really well, and I drew that way back in October of 2019. So, you know, good things have come out of this sketchbook. And I also learned that I absolutely love India ink as well. The pages in this sketchbook weren't really designed for wet media, but it didn't stop me. So you can see a lot less pretty stuff going on in here. Much more colour, but very, very few actual finished artworks of any description. Some of these that are here were filmed specifically. You know, they were videos. Like this one was the one with the neon pencils. And here we go. This is a very interesting point as well. So this is in April of 2020, so approximately 2 years ago, and I am still doing exercises and studies to try and improve my basic techniques, and I think that's something that's really, really important, and I still do it now. Not as much. It tends to be with unfamiliar objects or items. If I decided I wanted to draw duck-billed platypus, basic anatomy, I could probably do it and I would get something that looks like a platypus, but I've never drawn one before. I know what they look like, but I've never drawn one. So I would go and look up references and do a study, and I have shown some of them in my videos as well. One was clownfish. I didn't realise they had so many stripes and bits. I still do that to this day. And I think that's something that's really important as you go through your art journey as well, is to keep yourself fresh with things like that. So 2 years on from when I started, you can see here, so it's cross contour exercises and trying to draw bananas at different angles, which when you're doing it like this way, it's not that easy to get right. So it's always good to practice these things. It was also around this time, this is funny, it was also around this time that I got this little bit of an obsession with trees and realised that I really enjoyed drawing them. I really enjoyed drawing the textures. And this was one of the trees in my garden. And again, in lockdown, not very much going on, and I sat cross-legged in front of the tree and just drew all the branches, and this is very therapeutic for me. I really enjoy this, and this is really where my love of trees like kicked in properly. So that was another really nice thing to come out of the ELO sketchbook. The ELO for me though, I felt the paper was too smooth, knowing how much I like to use graphite, and I'm a bit of a texture monster, like knobbly bobbly. So although I really like the format of this, I love the square format, I love the lay flat pages and the stringy bit in the pocket in the back, this wasn't the sketchbook for me, so my quest continued. Number 6 is just a little Arteza watercolour sketchbook. I again picked up a few watercolours and thought, well, okay, I don't hate it. I did hate it to begin with. So this is just a little baby sketchbook that I go into sometimes if I want to try out some colours, and it's usually when Julia of Julia Kate Art Studio sends me her paint. She's such an enabler. And, just little doodles. So there's nothing exciting in here at all. Absolutely nothing. But that just kind of hovers about as well for when I feel like, squishing paint about. So my next day-to-day sketchbook was this one, and this is the one you've just finished, and I would imagine it's the one that most of you are most familiar with. This sketchbook lasted me much longer. This sketchbook lasted me 2 years, and well, nearly, not quite 2 years. One of the main reasons for that is that I didn't do Inktober on this particular occasion. I found it put a lot of pressure on me in an already busy life, and it was unnecessary pressure. It definitely benefited me the first year and the second year, but after that I decided that it wasn't for me. There was also there was quite a lot of information circulating in social media at the time about the way certain things were handled with Inktober and the branding, and I didn't agree with a lot of it, so I decided to step back and at that point would not do Inktober again. So this is where things become really interesting, because at this point, if you're to look through my day-to-day sketchbooks in order, it actually looks as if I'm going backwards. And this is the thing that surprised me and why I wanted to share these with you today, because the artwork in my sketchbooks is actually getting worse. I use these more and more as an ideas board rather than actually trying to perfect a technique before doing a finished piece. And I think what's happened is, as I've become more confident drawing certain subject matter, I've felt the need less and less to refine them in a sketchbook because I know what I'm doing with them. So that's my theory and I'm sticking to it. But the likes of here are really rough sketches and very few actual finished pages where there is just a drawing. And again, it's back to that thing. I realised I'm not the person that's ever going to have a pretty sketchbook, but like loads of half finished, or half finished, but half drawn things, and very little in the way of things that actually look like pictures. Lots of scribbles, lots of thumbnails, and that has got progressively worse. The further through this sketchbook you go, here was a little bird study, so here we go, we're into December of 2020, and I'm still practicing stuff because I had no idea how to draw small birds, and I was really intrigued to learn about the numerous joints that they've got in their legs. So much more learning going on and less actual, I'm going to draw a picture in my sketchbook. So I'm kind of at peace with myself now. I've got post-it notes and everything. I'm kind of at peace with myself now that these are just the way my sketchbooks are going to look. And also now, I mean, look at that. What's that? That's just a couple of pages of leaves. But I realised somewhere in this sketchbook, I don't really quite know where, but no one actually ever has to see my sketchbook. It's not for anyone else's eyes. If I was drawing full pictures in this sketchbook, I would only be doing it as a front and to show off, you know, in case someone asked me to see my sketchbook. First things first, if anybody ever asks you to look at your sketchbook, you don't have to say yes to them. And secondly, even if you do, they're expecting to see, you know, all these beautiful finished artworks because you're a person that draws. I'm totally at peace with anybody ever asking to see my sketchbook. I'll be like, no. I feel it's like the artist equivalent of someone asking to read your diary. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, but that's the way I feel about it. So I've got nothing to hide in my sketchbook, but the drawings that are actually within the pages have got considerably more sketchy, and some would say possibly uglier as well. But there are a lot of these sort of itty bitty, but I have found my purpose for it. This is what I want sketchbooks for. If I want to do something really pretty, I will do it on a full-size sheet of paper. This was the start of Mildred, so you can see Mildred didn't start out very pretty either when I was taking the the sort of basic proportions from the little clay model that I made. For me, the sketchbook is not a be all and end all. It's a tool to help you get to where you want to go. Now, whether or not you want to put things in a fridge at the end of your sketchbook, whether or not you feel the same way about sketchbooks, the whole point of this is that there is an evolution process and there's a growing process, and what works for you might not work for someone else. And I really wanted to show you the inside of my sketchbooks because there's a lot of artists out there on YouTube and they do sketchbook tours, and their sketchbooks are absolutely beautiful and every page looks like a masterpiece. I'm here to show you that I am not one of those people, and you know what, this works really, really well for me, and I'm actually really comfortable with having my sketchbooks as just that, just really rough sketches. So for those of you that are maybe having an identity crisis about your sketchbooks and what you think you should and shouldn't be doing in it, there is no right or wrong way to use a sketchbook. It's entirely up to yourself. I have ones that I hardly use at all, but they're there for a purpose. And I have these day-to-day type sketchbooks where the art inside has got progressively worse as I've become a better artist. But I like to think that I keep my best efforts for an actual finished piece. The only exception to that is if I am travelling, which I don't do a lot. I work from home, my proper job is home-based, and obviously here in the cave is where I do all my arting as well. I am not out and about a lot. If I do have to travel for any reason, I do take my sketchbook with me, and there may be times there where, the odd picture that's in here that's popped up that looks a bit more like a finished drawing. That's usually the time that those occur. Is when I'm away from home, but that is few and far between. If you're a person that commutes to work, maybe you have to get a train or a bus and you draw on the train every day, then, you know, if that's what it's for, then do it. So don't be in a rush to find a purpose and think that your sketchbook has to be a certain thing, because it definitely doesn't. And I am more than happy now going into, this is now sketchbook number 8. Exactly what my sketchbook is for, and I'm also very settled on the format now as well, and it's taken me 8 sketchbooks to get there. I'm not saying that this particular brand is the sketchbook that I'm going to be using for the rest of my life, but I now know after 4 years of drawing that I like the square format, and that I like the rounded corners as well, but also that I know the type of paper that I like to use as well, and this is where we are. I hope that this has been interesting or useful to some of you. I really wasn't sure how this video was going to be received, but I just thought it was worth doing to just show you what a not pretty sketchbook looks like, because mine are definitely not pretty. But a sketchbook is such a useful tool, and it doesn't matter in what capacity you use it, but it can really help you along your way, and obviously you can get a lot of joy out of it as well. So whatever your preference, keep searching. You will find that sketchbook that's right for you, or at least get yourself half the way there. It might take you 8 sketchbooks like it has for me to really sort of find your purpose. Whether it takes 4 minutes, 4 weeks, 4 months or 4 years, it's definitely worth having a sketchbook, and just do what you have to do for yourself. And just enjoy it, because I've certainly enjoyed a lot of these ones, especially now that we've got llama stickers on them all the time. So that's it for today, guys. I want to thank you very much for watching. Please stay safe, take care of each other, and I will see you back in the cave on Thursday for another video. So have a great day, everyone. Bye bye for now.